The envelope in Sarah Ashley's hands wasn't just a hospital bill. It was evidence of a murder. She didn't know that yet. All she knew was that for 3 months she'd been hemorrhaging money to keep a dying stranger alive. $23,000 gone. Her car sold. Ramen for breakfast, lunch, and dinner. All for Benjamin, the man with no memory who'd been left to bleed out on Riverside Avenue while a city of millions stepped over him. Tonight someone had finally noticed. Duke Charles Raymond, billionaire corporate titan, the man whose face was on every magazine cover, stood 10 feet away in the hospital lobby, staring at her like she'd just committed a crime. His jaw was clenched. His eyes were wild with something that looked like desperation. How did he even know she existed? "You," his voice cut through the sterile air like a blade. "You're the one paying his bills." Sarah's heart slammed against her ribs. Run, her instincts screamed, but her feet wouldn't move. The Duke closed the distance between them in 3 strides. Up close, she could see his hands trembling, see the sleepless nights carved into his face. "That man in room 304, he said, his voice dropping to something dangerous, something raw. "The one you've been keeping alive. Do you have any idea who he is?" Sarah shook her head, mute with terror. "He's my uncle. He's been missing for 23 years, and the people who tried to kill him 3 months ago," the Duke's eyes burned into hers. "They're going to come for you next, because whatever you think you know about that hit and run, you're wrong. It wasn't an accident." Sarah's vision tunneled. The receipt crumpled in her fist. "They murdered my father," the Duke whispered. "And they've been watching you since the day you lied to that ambulance and called yourself Benjamin's daughter." Behind him, through the hospital's glass doors, Sarah saw them. 3 black SUVs pulling into the parking lot. No license plates. Windows tinted black. The Duke grabbed her arm. "We have 60 seconds to get to room 304 and disappear, or we're all dead. Move, now." The next few minutes will reveal who's in those SUVs, why a stranger's hospital bills exposed a billion-dollar conspiracy, and how a broke waitress became the only thing standing between a killer and the truth. If you need to know what happens when kindness collides with murder, keep watching, because everything you think you know is about to shatter. "Let's get in quickly." Sarah ran. Not gracefully, she'd never been athletic, but with the desperate speed of someone who just learned she was prey. The Duke's hand gripped her wrist like iron as they sprinted through the hospital corridor. Behind them, the lobby doors crashed open. "Service elevator," she gasped. "Left, no, right past the cafeteria." "They'll cover the exits," the Duke said, his voice steady despite the sprint. "Like he'd done this before. Where's Benjamin's room?" "3rd floor, but you said." "Plans change. If they're here for all 3 of us. We move together or we die separately." The words hit Sarah like ice water. Die. This morning she'd been worried about rent. Now she was running from people who killed. They hit the stairwell. The Duke yanked a fire extinguisher off the wall, smashed it against the door handle behind them, jamming it. Bought them maybe 90 seconds. "Who are you?" Sarah hissed as they climbed. "Someone who's been hunting ghosts for 23 years. The Duke's face was granite. "Someone who just found out his ghost is alive. And someone who's about to ask you why the hell a waitress from Morrison's diner bankrupted herself for a stranger." 3rd floor landing. The Duke paused, listening. Sarah's lungs burned. Her mind raced faster than her feet had. "He was dying," she said simply. "Everyone else walked past him, I couldn't." The Duke looked at her then, really looked at her, and something shifted in his expression. "My uncle said the same thing about my father once. Everyone else was too busy making money to notice he was drowning in it. You would have liked each other." He pushed through the door. The hallway was chaos, nurses running toward the far end, alarms screaming, patients confused in doorways. Room 304's door stood open, Benjamin's bed empty. Sarah's stomach dropped. No, he can't walk that far, he's still here." The voice came from the bathroom. Benjamin stood there, hospital gown hanging off his skeletal frame, gripping the sink for support. But his eyes were sharp, terrifyingly sharp. "Hello, Charles," Benjamin's voice cracked. "You grew up." The Duke Charles made a sound like he'd been punched. "Uncle Ben, I thought you were dead. Mom thought you stole from us. She died thinking." "I know what Elizabeth thought. I know what they made her think." Benjamin's face hardened. "Where's Marcus?" "Still running Raymond Industries into the ground while getting rich off it. Where have you been?" "Running, hiding, staying alive long enough to—" Benjamin's eyes landed on Sarah and his expression softened impossibly. "Long enough for an angel to find me bleeding on the street and refuse to let me die. Miss Ashley, I owe you everything. Now help me pay that debt. Because we're about to bring down the people who killed your father, Charles, and they're currently in this building." Sarah's head spun. "How do you know my name? I never—" "You talk in your sleep when you doze in that chair." Benjamin smiled grimly. "About your student loans, your dead-end job, your ex-boyfriend who said you cared too much about strangers. I've had 3 months to learn about the woman keeping me alive. Now I'm going to return the favor." The door exploded inward. Not metaphorically. Actual splinters and smoke. 2 men in tactical gear stormed through, weapons drawn, not pointing at them yet, but the threat was clear. Charles stepped in front of Sarah and Benjamin, hands raised. His voice went cold, aristocratic, every inch the billionaire. "Gentlemen, I'm sure this is a misunderstanding. I'm Charles Raymond. You know who I am. You know what happens when people threaten me." The lead operative smiled. "We know exactly who you are, Your Grace. Our employer sends his regards, said you'd try the intimidation play." He gestured with his weapon. "All 3 of you, downstairs, the van's waiting. You can walk or we can carry you. Choose fast." Sarah's hand found her pocket. Her phone was there, still recording. She'd started recording her walk home from work every night after the assault attempt last year, never stopped the habit. The phone had been recording since the lobby. She pressed the button to live stream, tapped share to her social media, all 83 followers, but it was something. "I said move," the operative barked. "Wait," Benjamin's voice cut through. "Before we go, I have one question. Marcus sent you, didn't he?" The operative's smile widened. "Smart old man." "Then tell Marcus something for me." Benjamin's eyes went dead cold. "Tell him Edward Raymond's brother isn't running anymore. Tell him I kept copies. Tell him the girl he's threatening just live-streamed your face to the internet. And tell him—" The operative glanced at his partner, confused. The partner was checking his phone, face going pale. "Tell him he's already lost. He just doesn't know it yet." Sarah's phone buzzed. A notification, then another, then 20 more. Her live stream was being shared. One of her followers had 1,000 followers, who had 10,000, the exponential spread of digital wildfire. The operative lunged for Sarah's phone. Charles slammed into him. They crashed into the wall, medical equipment shattering. Benjamin grabbed Sarah's arm with surprising strength, yanking her toward the window. "Fire escape," he gasped. "I've been planning this for weeks, just in case." "You can barely walk." "Adrenaline's a hell of a drug. Move." Behind them, Charles and the 2 operatives were a tangle of violence. Sarah saw blood, couldn't tell whose. The second operative was pulling a radio, calling for backup. Benjamin had the window open. Cold night air rushed in. The fire escape was rusted, questionable, 3 stories up. "I'm 60 years old and half dead," Benjamin said. "If I can do this, so can you. Now jump." Sarah looked back. Charles caught her eye for half a second, mouthed 2 words, "Get him out." Then he threw himself at both operatives, giving them the opening they needed. Sarah grabbed Benjamin and launched them both onto the fire escape. The metal shrieked, bolts groaned. For a heart-stopping moment, Sarah thought they'd fall. Then they were climbing down, Benjamin moving like a man possessed, Sarah's hands slipping on rust and ice. sirens wailing in the distance. Police or more operatives, impossible to tell. They hit the alley. Benjamin stumbled. Sarah caught him. "The Duke," she gasped. "Charles, we left him." "Charles Raymond survived losing everything once before," Benjamin wheezed. "He'll survive this, but we won't survive if we don't move. I know a place. Safe house. 20 minutes from here if we hurry." "I don't understand any of this." "You will." Benjamin's grip on her arm tightened. "But first, I need you to tell me everything you saw the night of my accident. Every detail. Because, Miss Ashley, you didn't just witness a hit and run. You witnessed an assassination attempt. And whatever you recorded that night, that's the key to destroying the people who have gotten away with murder for 23 years. Sarah's mind flashed back. The video on her phone, the one she'd never watched because it was too horrible. The car with no headlights. The intentional swerve. The passenger holding up a phone, filming. "Oh God," she whispered. "I have footage, I have video of my attempted murder, of their faces, of their vehicle." Benjamin's smile was terrifying. "Miss Ashley, you've been carrying a loaded gun for 3 months and didn't even know it. Now we're going to aim it at the right targets." Above them someone shouted. Flashlight beams swept the alley. Benjamin pulled her into the shadows, into a maintenance tunnel she'd never noticed in 3 months of coming here. Into the dark. "Welcome to the war, Sarah Ashley," he said. "Your good deed just made you the most dangerous person in this city. Now let's go save the Duke and burn down an empire." The tunnel swallowed them whole. Behind them, the hospital exploded with sirens, searchlights, and the beginning of a manhunt that would make every news channel by morning. Sarah had woken up today worried about hospital bills. She was ending it as a fugitive with evidence that could topple billionaires. And somewhere in that chaos, a man she just met, a duke with desperate eyes and 23 years of ghosts, was fighting for his life to buy them time to escape. "Don't die," Sarah thought. "Don't you dare die before I understand what the hell is happening." But the tunnel only led forward, into darkness, into danger. Into the truth. The medical team burst into room 304, pushing Sarah and Charles aside. Through the chaos of urgent voices and flashing equipment, Sarah glimpsed Benjamin's terrified eyes fixed on the Duke. Not confused, terrified. "We need to clear the room," a doctor shouted. But Charles Raymond didn't move, his face a mask of anguish. "Uncle Benjamin, it's Charles, Edward's son. You're safe now. You're safe." Benjamin's vital signs stabilized as quickly as they'd crashed. The doctor, a stern woman in her 50s, turned to them with fire in her eyes. "Whoever you are, you almost gave my patient a heart attack. Out, now." In the hallway, Charles leaned against the wall, the composure he'd carried like armor completely shattered. Sarah had never seen a man look so lost. "He was afraid of me," Charles whispered. "After everything he saw me and thought," he couldn't finish. Sarah made a decision that would change everything. "Come with me." She led him to the small staff break room she'd claimed as her refuge during long nights. From her locker, she pulled out a worn journal, Benjamin's journal, the one the EMTs had found in his torn jacket pocket. "I didn't tell anyone about this," Sarah said quietly. "The police never followed up after Benjamin couldn't identify his attacker. I kept it because I thought someday he might want it back." Charles took the journal with reverent hands. The leather was water-stained and bloodied, but the writing inside was meticulous. He began to read, and Sarah watched his face transform, shock, anger, grief, all flickering across his aristocratic features. "My God," he breathed. "My father didn't squander the fortune. He was robbed by his own business partners, and Benjamin tried to warn him." The journal entries painted a damning picture. 23 years ago, Benjamin Raymond had been the family's accountant and Edward Raymond's most trusted advisor. He discovered that Marcus Ashford and Victoria Chen, his brother's business partners in Raymond Industries, or systematically siphoning millions through shell companies. "Edward won't believe me," one entry read. "He's known Marcus since Harvard. He thinks I'm paranoid, but I have proof now, documents showing how they've been falsifying reports to the board. They're planning something bigger. I can feel it. If Edward doesn't act soon, they'll destroy everything he's built." The entry date stopped 3 months before my father died in what they ruled an accident during a business trip to Singapore, Charles said, his voice hollow. "Benjamin disappeared 2 weeks after the funeral. My mother was so convinced he'd betrayed us, stolen what was left of the company assets, that she made the whole family swear never to speak his name again." "Did anyone look for him?" Sarah asked. "I did, for years. But I was only 22, just finished university, and suddenly responsible for my younger sister while fighting off creditors. By the time I had resources to mount a real search, the trail was cold. I assumed he was either dead or had escaped to somewhere we'd never find him." Charles looked up from the journal, his eyes burning. "Someone tried to kill him, Sarah. This wasn't a random hit and run. This was attempted murder." "The journal ends 3 weeks before the accident," Sarah noted. "Where was Benjamin all that time? Where has he been for 23 years? Before Charles could answer, the door burst open. A man in an expensive suit stood there, late 40s, silver hair, and a smile that didn't reach his eyes. Sarah recognized him from the society pages. Marcus Ashford, one of the city's most influential businessmen. "Charles, I heard you were here. Hospital administrator is an old friend. When he mentioned you'd arrived with quite some urgency, I was concerned." His eyes slid to Sarah, assessment and dismissal in a single glance, then landed on the journal in Charles's hands. For just a moment, Sarah saw his expression flicker, recognition and fear. "What brings you to this particular hospital, Marcus?" Charles asked, his voice carefully neutral. "Board meeting at the medical complex next door. Coincidence, really." Marcus stepped into the room, closing the door behind him. "Is that Edward's old journal? I haven't seen that in years. Found it while cleaning out your father's office." It was smoothly done, but Sarah caught the lie. Marcus knew exactly what that journal was. Charles stood, tucking the journal into his jacket. "Something like that. Actually, Marcus, perfect timing. I've been meaning to ask you about some old business. The Singapore trip. Do you remember the details?" "Ancient history, Charles. Why dredge up painful memories?" Marcus's tone was sympathetic, but his body language had changed, coiled, alert. "You've built an impressive recovery from your family's difficulties. Why not leave the past buried?" "Because sometimes the past doesn't stay buried," Sarah interjected, surprising herself. "Sometimes it shows up bleeding on a street corner, waiting 23 years for justice." Marcus's attention snapped to her, really seeing her for the first time. "And you are?" "Someone who pays attention," Sarah replied, holding his gaze. She saw it then, the moment Marcus realized she knew something important. "Charles, a word of advice from an old friend of your father's," Marcus said, his voice taking on a harder edge. "There are people in this city with long memories and short tempers. Some mysteries are better left unsolved, for everyone's safety." After Marcus left, Sarah and Charles stood in charged silence. "That was either incredibly brave or incredibly stupid," Charles finally said. "Probably both, but did you see his face when he saw the journal? He knows something." Charles pulled out his phone, typing rapidly. "I'm calling my security team. I'm also arranging protection for you and Benjamin, if Marcus is involved." "Then we need proof," Sarah finished. "Benjamin's journal is evidence, but it's 23 years old. We need something current, something that connects the past to the present." "We need Benjamin to remember," Charles said grimly. "Which means we need to figure out where he's been and what he knows." Sarah's phone rang the hospital. "Miss Ashley, Mr. Benjamin is asking for you. He says he's ready to talk, but he'll only speak with you present." They returned to room 304 together. Benjamin was sitting up, looking aged beyond his years but mentally sharp. When he saw Charles, he didn't panic this time. Instead, his eyes filled with tears. "You look so much like Edward," Benjamin said, his voice rough. "I'm sorry, boy. I'm so sorry I couldn't save him." Charles crossed the room in 3 strides, grasping his uncle's hand. "You tried. I know now. I know everything." "No," Benjamin said, his grip surprisingly strong. "You don't. Not yet, but you need to. Because what happened to your father, what they did to our family, it's happening again. And this time they're coming for you." Benjamin's revelation hung in the air like a blade. Sarah locked the door while Charles pulled a chair close to his uncle's bed, his face set with determination. "Start from the beginning," Charles said gently. "The night you disappeared." Benjamin closed his eyes, and when he spoke, his voice carried the weight of 2 decades of silence. "The night after Edward's funeral, I went back to the office. I knew they'd try to destroy the evidence once he was gone. I was right. Marcus and Victoria were already there, feeding documents into the incinerator. I confronted them." "What happened?" Sarah asked, perching on the windowsill. "Victoria pulled a gun. She actually pulled a gun on me." Benjamin's laugh was bitter. "Told me I had 2 choices. Disappear willingly with enough money to start over somewhere far away, or disappear permanently. Marcus was more pragmatic. He said the business deal was too big to let one paranoid accountant ruin it, that Edward's death was necessary for the company to reach its true potential." Charles's face had gone white. "They admitted to killing my father." "Marcus did more than admit it," he bragged. "Said Edward's brakes failing on that mountain road in Singapore was his finest work. Untraceable, accidental, perfect." Benjamin's hands trembled. "I took their money. God help me, I took it and ran. I told myself I'd gather evidence, come back, expose them. But I was a coward." "You were trying to survive," Sarah said firmly. "What did you do for 23 years?" Benjamin's story unfolded like a spy novel. He'd fled to Mexico initially, then moved through South America, always looking over his shoulder. He'd worked odd jobs, accountant for small businesses, English teacher, even a bartender in Buenos Aires. He'd saved everything, planning his return. 2 years ago, I finally came back. I'd hired a private investigator to track what happened to the family, to Charles. When I learned you'd rebuilt the Raymond name from nothing, Charles, Benjamin's voice broke. "I was so proud, and so afraid, because if you were succeeding, Marcus and Victoria would see you as a threat." "What brought you to Riverside Avenue?" Charles asked. "I'd made contact with someone inside Raymond Industries, a junior accountant who'd noticed irregularities. We were supposed to meet that night. She was going to give me copies of current financial records showing they were running the same scheme with the new board members." Benjamin's expression darkened. "I was waiting at the corner when the car came out of nowhere. No headlights. Aimed right at me. I remember flying through the air and then nothing until I woke up here, with this angel telling me I was going to be okay." He smiled at Sarah, who felt her eyes sting with tears. "The accountant," Charles said urgently. "What was her name?" "Jessica Winters. She was young, smart, reminded me of—" Benjamin stopped. "Charles, has anyone named Jessica Winters contacted you?" Charles was already on his phone, his face grim. "Jerry, I need you to find everything you can on a Jessica Winters who worked at Raymond Industries 2 years ago. Everything. And Jerry, prioritize safety over discretion." He hung up and looked at his uncle. "If they tried to kill you once, they'll try again," Benjamin finished. "Which is why I need to tell you what I learned before it's too late. The scheme Marcus and Victoria are running, it's not just about Raymond Industries anymore. They've expanded it to 6 major corporations. They're preparing to strip assets from all of them simultaneously and collapse the companies, destroying thousands of jobs and pensions. The board vote is scheduled for next month." Sarah's mind reeled. "How much money are we talking about?" "Conservative estimate, $3 billion. Enough to disappear forever. enough to make powerful friends who'd ensure no one ever investigates. Charles stood abruptly, packing. We need those documents. We need proof they can't deny. Uncle Benjamin, did Jessica give you anything before? She sent files to a secure email address. I never got to access them before the accident. Benjamin recited an email and password. But Charles, you need to understand, Marcus has connections everywhere. Police, judges, business leaders. Even if we expose him, he has the power to bury it. Not if we go public, Sarah said suddenly. Both men turned to her. If we leak it to the press, multiple outlets simultaneously, he can't control the narrative. Especially if we have a witness, she gestured to Benjamin, who can testify about both crimes. Charles was nodding slowly. We'd need more than just financial documents. We'd need someone currently inside who can testify about ongoing criminal activity. His phone rang. Charles, we have a problem. Jerry's voice was tense over the speaker. Jessica Winters is dead. Car accident 8 months ago. Single vehicle collision, ruled driver error. But here's the thing, her apartment was broken into 3 days before she died. Nothing stolen according to the police report, but they were looking for something, Charles finished. Did she have family, anyone who might have her personal effects? Sister in Portland. I can get you contact information. After Jerry hung up, silence fell over the room. The weight of what they were facing settled on all of them. 2 murders, attempted murder, and a conspiracy involving billions of dollars and some of the most powerful people in the city. This is bigger than us, Benjamin said quietly. Charles, you have a sister, a life you've rebuilt. Maybe we should. No, Charles's voice was steel. They murdered my father, they destroyed my family, they tried to kill you, and they're planning to devastate thousands of innocent people. We're not running, we're ending this. He turned to Sarah, and she saw a question in his eyes before he asked it. You don't have to be part of this. You've already done more than anyone could ask. I can arrange protection for you, money to restart somewhere else. I'm in, Sarah interrupted. I didn't spend 3 months and my life savings on Benjamin just to watch him get killed by some corporate sociopaths. Besides, someone needs to keep you aristocrats grounded in reality. Despite everything, Benjamin laughed. Edward would have loved her, Charles. Reminds me of your mother before my father's death broke her, Charles said softly. Then his expression hardened into something fierce. We take them down, all of them, but we do it smart. We need allies, people Marcus and Victoria can't touch or intimidate. Sarah thought of her recently purchased phone in her locker, its storage still mostly empty. I have video. From the night of the accident. I was walking home from my late shift. I always record my walk because the neighborhood can be sketchy. I recorded the hit and run. Both men stared at her. You have footage of Benjamin's accident. Charles asked carefully, have you watched it? No, it was too horrible. But if there's anything that shows the vehicle or the driver. That could be evidence of attempted murder, Benjamin breathed. Sarah, you might have just given us the weapon we need. But as Sarah pulled out her phone to show them, the lights in the hospital flickered. Once. Twice. Then the backup generators kicked in, bathing everything in eerie emergency lighting. Charles moved to the window. In the parking lot below, 3 black SUVs had pulled up. We need to leave, he said urgently. Now. Charles was already moving, pulling Benjamin's IV out with practiced efficiency. Sarah, your car or mine? I took the bus, Sarah admitted. I sold my car to pay Benjamin's bills. Charles stared at her for a heartbeat, something unreadable flashing across his face. Then he was all business. We take the service elevator to the basement. My driver is always within 5 minutes. Uncle Benjamin, can you walk? Benjamin was already swinging his legs over the bed, despite his obvious weakness. After 23 years of running, a few bruised ribs won't slow me down. They moved quickly through the hospital's rear corridors. Sarah's waitressing experience paid off. She knew every shortcut, every service route designed to keep the messy reality of hospital work invisible from patients and visitors. Charles made rapid calls on his phone, his voice low and urgent. "The SUVs had no plates," he murmured as they reached the service elevator. "Professional, which means Marcus isn't just trying to frighten us anymore." The elevator descended with agonizing slowness. Benjamin leaned against the wall, his breathing labored. Sarah noticed blood seeping through his hospital gown. He'd torn some of his stitches. "We need to get him proper medical attention," she said. "I know a doctor who owes me significant favors," Charles replied. "Ex-military, discreet." The elevator opened to the basement loading dock. The smell of diesel and disinfectant was overwhelming. Charles's phone buzzed, a text with just a location pin. A black Mercedes pulled up seconds later, different from the SUVs upstairs. A serious-looking woman in her 30s was driving. "Rachel's my head of security," Charles explained as they piled in. "Former Secret Service. Rachel, we need the safe house, the Connecticut property." "Already en route, sir, but we have a problem." Rachel's eyes met his in the rearview mirror. "Someone leaked your location to the press. We've got 3 news vans heading this way, and traffic cameras show those SUVs are following a specific search pattern. They'll figure out our exit route in approximately 4 minutes." Charles cursed under his breath. Ideas. Sarah found herself speaking before thinking. "The abandoned subway tunnel on 5th. It's been closed for renovations for 8 months. There's an access point near the hospital that connects to the old network. My ex-boyfriend used to explore them, urban explorer type. If we can get there, we can move through the underground system and surface anywhere in the city." Rachel's eyes gleamed. "That's actually brilliant, sir." "Do it," Charles decided. "But first," he turned to Sarah, "I need to see that video now." Sarah pulled up the footage with shaking hands. The video was dark, shaky, but clear enough. She'd been walking home from her shift, phone in hand, when she heard the engine. She turned instinctively toward the sound, capturing the moment a black sedan with its headlights off accelerated directly at Benjamin. The old man had tried to dodge, but the car adjusted, hunting him. The impact was sickening. The car didn't stop. But Sarah's phone had caught something crucial. In the split second before impact, the streetlight illuminated the interior of the car. 2 people. The driver's face was partially visible, and in the passenger seat, someone was holding what looked like a phone, recording. "They were filming his death," Benjamin whispered, his voice thick with horror and rage. "They wanted evidence he was dead." "Pause there," Charles commanded. Sarah froze the frame. He zoomed in on the driver's face. "Rachel, send this to Jerry. I want identification, and I want it yesterday." "Already forwarding," Rachel said, navigating them through narrow service alleys. 2 minutes to the tunnel access. They abandoned the car near a construction site. Rachel had somehow procured keys to the site's fence and the tunnel access. The underground was cold, damp, and suffocatingly dark. Rachel produced flashlights and led them into the abandoned subway system like she'd done this 100 times. "How far to the safe house?" Benjamin asked, his voice strained. 5 miles as the crow flies," Charles said. "But we're not crows, and we need to make sure we're not followed. We'll surface in 3 different locations to check for surveillance before heading to Connecticut." As they walked through the echoing tunnels, Sarah found herself next to Charles. "You do this often, flee through abandoned subway tunnels." His laugh was unexpected and genuine. "You'd be surprised how useful it is being paranoid and wealthy. I've maintained escape routes and safe locations since I was 25. After what happened to my father, I swore I'd never be caught unprepared again. Yet here we are, running from murderers with a hospitalized man and a broke waitress. Great preparation." "Here we are with the 2 people Marcus fears most," Charles corrected. "Benjamin, who knows where the bodies are buried, and you, who has video evidence of attempted murder and documentation of your financial sacrifice, which establishes both your credibility and your lack of motive for lying. Sarah hadn't thought of it that way. I'm a witness. You're the witness who can't be discredited. No connection to the family, no financial stake in the outcome, just someone who did the right thing repeatedly at significant personal cost. In court, you're gold. They surfaced eventually in an abandoned station, then took a series of cars Rachel had arranged to a private airstrip where a helicopter was waiting. 2 hours later, they were in a sprawling estate hidden in Connecticut woods, the kind of place Sarah had only seen in movies. The doctor Charles mentioned was already there. Dr. Sarah Mitchell was efficient and no-nonsense, treating Benjamin's injuries while grilling them about exactly what they'd gotten themselves into. The video needs to be uploaded to multiple secure locations immediately, Dr. Mitchell said as she worked. If something happens to that phone, you lose your proof. Charles's tech specialist Jerry arrived within the hour, a nervous young man with 3 laptops and enough equipment to start a small electronics store. He took Sarah's phone like it was made of spun glass. I'll extract everything, create redundant backups across 5 continents, and embed metadata that proves when and where it was recorded, Jerry explained. Give me 2 hours. While Jerry worked, Charles and Benjamin huddled over laptops, accessing the email Jessica Winters had sent before her death. The files painted a damning picture: systematic fraud, falsified reports, shell companies, everything. But as Sarah read over their shoulders, she noticed something. These dates, she said, pointing. Some of these transactions happened after Jessica's death. Someone else must be maintaining the records. Someone still inside Raymond Industries. Charles's phone rang. Rachel's voice was urgent. Sir, we have a development. Marcus Ashford just called a press conference. He's accusing you of embezzlement from Raymond Industries and claiming Benjamin is a fraud you've hired to manipulate the board of directors. He's filed charges with the state attorney general. The room went silent. He's trying to discredit us before we can expose him, Benjamin said. Classic preemptive strike. Make us look like the criminals. Then we need to move faster, Charles said grimly. Jerry, how long until those files are secure? 30 minutes. Make it 20. We're going public in 1 hour. Every major news outlet simultaneously. Complete document dump. Video evidence. Benjamin's testimony. Everything. Charles, Rachel warned, if you do this without absolute proof, Marcus will destroy you in court. We need the insider. We need whoever took over Jessica's role feeding us information. Sarah's mind was racing. Something had been nagging at her since the hospital. When Marcus showed up at the hospital, how did he know you were there? The administrator told him, but why would the administrator call Marcus in the first place unless Marcus owns him, Charles finished, or unless someone tipped Marcus off that I was getting close to something. Benjamin's face went pale. Charles, your staff, how many people knew you were investigating Raymond Industries? Just my senior team, 5 people I've worked with for years. One of them is compromised, Sarah said with certainty. That's how Marcus always stays ahead. He has someone in your organization. The implication hung there. They were already infiltrated. Marcus knew their moves before they made them. And somewhere in that house, someone was listening. Charles's reaction was immediate and controlled. He continued speaking normally while typing rapidly on his phone, showing the screen to Benjamin, Rachel, and Sarah. Possible surveillance. Play along. We should wait until morning to make any decisions, Charles said aloud, his voice casual. Everyone's exhausted. Let's reconvene after we've had rest and can think clearly. But his phone was a flurry of silent text messages. Rachel read them and slipped from the room without a word. Dr. Mitchell, catching on quickly, announced she needed to check the medical supplies in her car. Jerry remained hunched over his laptops, but Sarah noticed his fingers had stopped typing. Benjamin played his part perfectly, the former accountant understanding immediately. "You're right, Charles. I've been running on adrenaline since I woke up. I should rest." Sarah followed Charles's lead as they dispersed to separate rooms throughout the estate. But once alone with Charles in what appeared to be a library, he pulled out a separate phone, not the one he'd been using all day. "Burner phone," he whispered. "Bought it 3 years ago, never turned it on around any of my regular team. If there's a mole, they don't know about this." He made a call. "Harris, it's Charles Raymond. Yes, I know it's late. I need you to access my company's server remotely and check for any unauthorized access in the past 48 hours. I'll wait." To Sarah, he explained quietly, "Harris is my original IT consultant. Retired now, lives in Alaska, no connection to my current operations. If anyone's been leaking information, he'll find the digital footprint." 5 minutes later, Harris called back. Charles's expression grew darker as he listened. "Someone with senior-level access has been copying files to an external drive. Started 6 months ago, coinciding with when I began quietly investigating Raymond Industries." Charles's jaw tightened. "The access times suggest it's happening during normal business hours." Harris narrowed it to 3 possible staff members based on login patterns. He showed Sarah the names. She didn't recognize 2 of them, but the third made her heart sink. Margaret Foster, Charles's executive assistant. The woman who'd been with him for 8 years, who'd helped him rebuild the Raymond name from ashes. "It could still be one of the others," Sarah offered. "Margaret was the only one who knew I was going to the hospital yesterday. She arranged my schedule. She's the only person who could have tipped off Marcus about my exact location and timing." Charles looked physically ill. "She was Edward's assistant before she was mine. I thought she was loyal to the family." "Maybe she is," Benjamin said from the doorway. They hadn't heard him enter. "Or maybe she's terrified. Charles, what do you actually know about Margaret's life outside work?" Charles looked blank. "She's professional, private. Why?" "Because leverage comes in many forms. 23 years ago, Victoria Chen threatened to harm my sister if I didn't disappear. Family is always the easiest pressure point." Sarah's mind was working. "We need to talk to Margaret directly, but not here, not where the mole, whoever it is, can warn Marcus we're onto them." Rachel reappeared, her expression grim. "I did a sweep. Found 3 listening devices. 1 in the main room, 1 in the kitchen, 1 in the second-floor hallway. Professional grade, probably planted by whoever accessed the property beforehand. I've disabled them, but whoever placed them knows their equipment just went dark." "How long do we have?" Charles asked. "If they're professionals, they're already moving. We need to relocate now." But Benjamin shook his head. "No, we use this. They think we're compromised and panicking. Let them think they're winning." A plan took shape, audacious and dangerous. They would let the mole believe they were fleeing to a secondary location, an actual safe house Charles maintained in upstate New York. Rachel would take Jerry and Dr. Mitchell there in a convoy that would be easy to track. Anyone surveilling them would follow that group, believing the principals were escaping. Meanwhile, Charles, Benjamin, and Sarah would remain behind, hidden in the estate's unused wine cellar, a space not listed on any official blueprints because it had been added illegally by the previous owner. "We use the time to contact Margaret without anyone knowing," Charles explained. "If she's the mole under duress, we offer her a way out. If she's genuinely corrupt, we let her lead us to Marcus." It took 2 hours to set up. The fleeing convoy left at 3 a.m. with great visible urgency. Charles, Benjamin, and Sarah descended into the wine cellar, a surprisingly comfortable space with its own ventilation, bathroom, and stored supplies. Charles had clearly prepared for worst-case scenarios. At dawn, Charles used his burner phone to text Margaret from an unknown number. Your employer is in danger. If you want to help him, come to Riverside Park North entrance 8 a.m. Come alone. Tell no one. This is his only chance. If she shows, we know she's at least conflicted, Benjamin said. If she doesn't, or if she brings company, we know she's fully compromised. Sarah found herself packing. What if this is a trap? What if she brings Marcus's people and they're waiting for us? Then we have Rachel and her team as backup, staged a quarter-mile away, Charles said. And we'll have proof of her betrayal. Either way, we get answers. The wait was agonizing. At 7:30 a.m., they emerged from the wine cellar, confirmed the house was empty, and took a nondescript sedan to Riverside Park. Rachel's voice crackled through a concealed earpiece Charles wore. 3 of my team are in position, dressed as joggers and dog walkers. The park is clean so far. No sign of surveillance. At exactly 8 a.m., Margaret Foster appeared. She looked terrible, eyes red from crying, clothes rumpled, moving like someone who hadn't slept in days. She sat on the designated bench alone, hands trembling as she checked her phone. Charles approached slowly, Sarah and Benjamin hanging back but visible. Margaret's face crumpled when she saw him. "I'm so sorry," she sobbed before he could speak. "I'm so sorry. They have my daughter, Mr. Raymond. They took Emma 3 months ago and said if I didn't cooperate, they'd kill her. I didn't know what to do. I couldn't." Her voice broke entirely. Charles sat beside her, his anger visibly warring with compassion. "Tell me everything, from the beginning." Margaret's story spilled out in broken fragments. 6 months ago, her college-age daughter Emma had been studying abroad in Thailand. She disappeared one night, and Margaret received a video call showing Emma bound and terrified. The voice on the call was distorted, but the message clear: cooperate fully with certain requests, or Emma would die. Every week they sent proof of life, a new photo or brief video. They wanted information about your investigation into Raymond Industries, copies of documents, your schedule, who you were meeting with. At first, it was small things. Then they wanted more. They knew everything, Mr. Raymond. They knew about the accountant, Jessica. They're the ones who killed her. They told me to make sure you knew, to keep me compliant. "Where's Emma now?" Benjamin asked gently. "I don't know. They move her every few days. The backgrounds in the photos change. But..." Margaret pulled out her phone with shaking hands, showing them the latest proof of life photo from 2 days ago. "I've been trying to find patterns, anything that might help locate her." Sarah leaned in, studying the image. Emma Foster was a young woman with her mother's eyes, photographed against a plain wall. But in the reflection of a window visible in the corner of the image, Sarah spotted something. "That's a city skyline. And that building," she pointed to a distinctive architectural feature, "that's the Chrysler Building. She's in New York, or was 2 days ago." Rachel's voice crackled through the earpiece. "We can work with that. Narrow down buildings with that sight line, cross-reference with properties connected to Marcus Ashford or Victoria Chen. Give me 4 hours." Charles took Margaret's hands. "I'm going to get your daughter back, but I need you to do exactly what I say. Can you do that?" Margaret nodded, desperate hope flooding her face. "You're going to go back to the office. You're going to continue feeding them information. But the information you give them will be what we want them to know. You're going to help us set a trap." What followed was the most intricate deception Sarah had ever witnessed. Margaret would tell her handlers that Charles was planning to flee the country, that he was moving money offshore, that he was planning to destroy evidence before disappearing. The bait: a meeting with a Swiss banker at a private airport in 48 hours, where Charles would supposedly transfer everything and escape. "Marcus will have to show up personally to stop that," Benjamin said with certainty. "He can't risk Charles escaping with evidence. And wherever Marcus goes, he'll bring his insurance, Emma Foster. He'll want leverage in case Charles has backup plans." It was a desperate gamble built on assumptions about human behavior and criminal psychology. But it was all they had. As they prepared to part ways, Margaret gripped Charles's arm. "Why are you helping me, after what I did to you?" "Because you're a mother protecting her child," Charles said simply. "And because the real villain here isn't you. It's the system that made you choose between your daughter and your integrity." Back at the safe house, they reconvened with Rachel and Jerry. The tech specialist had news. "I've been analyzing the financial documents Jessica Winters sent. There's a pattern in the shell company transactions. Whoever's maintaining the fraud after Jessica's death isn't as careful. They're using a consistent IP address that traces to a specific location, Victoria Chen's private office in the Raymond Industries building." "Victoria's still actively managing the fraud," Charles realized. "Which means she's the one with current knowledge of all the details, if we can get her to talk." "We won't," Benjamin interrupted. "I know Victoria. She's a true believer in her own superiority. She'll never confess, never cooperate, but she'll make mistakes if she thinks she's won." Sarah had been quiet, thinking. What if we give her a victory? What if we let Marcus's trap succeed, or appear to succeed? Everyone turned to look at her. If Marcus thinks he's caught Charles at the airport, thinks he's won, he'll get cocky. He'll bring Emma as leverage, yes, but he'll also bring Victoria to celebrate. And if they both believe they're untouchable, if they believe Charles is cornered, Sarah's eyes gleamed, they'll talk, they'll gloat, and if we're recording. "We get a confession," Rachel finished. "It's brilliant, dangerous as hell, but brilliant." Charles was nodding slowly. "We'd need a team in place, multiple recording devices, an escape plan when things go wrong, and they will go wrong." 48 hours, Benjamin said. "We have 48 hours to prepare a trap for people who have spent 23 years perfecting their own. God help us all." The private airport north of the city was a playground for the wealthy. Pristine runways, discreet hangars, and staff trained to ask no questions. At 11 p.m. on Friday, it was nearly deserted, exactly as planned. Charles Raymond stood on the tarmac beside a sleek private jet, dressed impeccably despite the late hour. A leather briefcase sat at his feet, supposedly containing proof of wire transfers and offshore accounts. To any observer, he looked like a man preparing to flee justice. But in his ear, a nearly invisible earpiece connected him to Rachel and her team positioned throughout the airport. And in the briefcase, instead of financial documents, were multiple recording devices, each streaming to secure servers in 3 countries. "Target vehicles approaching," Rachel murmured. 3 SUVs matching the description. They're not trying to hide. Sarah watched from inside the hangar, heart hammering. She wore a tactical vest Rachel had insisted on, feeling absurd and terrified in equal measure. Benjamin sat beside her, his breathing labored but his eyes sharp. Despite Dr. Mitchell's protests, he'd refused to stay behind. 23 years I've waited for this, he'd said. I'm seeing it through. The SUVs pulled up in a choreographed formation. Marcus Ashford emerged from the center vehicle, flanked by 4 large men in suits that barely concealed their weapons. Victoria Chen stepped out from another vehicle, her expression triumphant. But it was the 3rd SUV that made Sarah's blood run cold. 2 more guards emerged, escorting a terrified young woman, Emma Foster. Her hands were bound, and she stumbled on the tarmac. "Easy," Rachel's voice warned in Sarah's ear. "We knew they'd bring her. Everything is going according to plan. Charles knows what to do." On the tarmac, Charles showed no reaction to Emma's presence. His face was a mask of aristocratic composure as Marcus approached. "Charles Raymond," Marcus said, his voice carrying in the quiet night. "Did you really think you could run from this, from us?" "I think I'm offering you a deal," Charles replied calmly. "I disappear, you get to keep your empire, and nobody has to know what really happened 23 years ago. Everyone wins." Marcus laughed, the sound chilling. "You still don't understand, do you? We don't need deals, we've already won. Your assistant has been feeding us every move you've made. Your evidence has been systematically destroyed. Jessica Winters is dead. And your uncle, Marcus gestured dismissively, nobody will believe the testimony of a delusional old man who disappeared for 2 decades. He's baiting Charles, Benjamin whispered to Sarah, trying to make him angry, make him slip up. But Charles remained perfectly calm. So why are you here, Marcus? If you've already won, why not just let me go? Victoria Chen stepped forward, unable to resist. Because you're a loose end, Charles, and we don't leave loose ends. Your father learned that lesson. Now it's your turn. My father, Charles said quietly. Tell me, did he suffer when you tampered with his brakes in Singapore? Sarah held her breath. This was it, the moment they needed Marcus to incriminate himself. Marcus smiled. Edward died believing his business partner and brother betrayed him. He died confused and alone on that mountain road, brakes screaming, realizing too late that his judgment of character had failed him. Yes, Charles, he suffered, but not as much as your mother did, drinking herself to death while everyone whispered about the Raymond family's fall from grace. That's it, Rachel breathed in Sarah's ear. We have him. Clear confession, multiple witnesses recorded on 6 devices. We can move. But Victoria wasn't done. She stepped closer to Charles, her voice venomous. The beautiful irony is that you've spent 15 years rebuilding what we took from your father, and now we'll take it from you just like before. The board vote happens Monday. By Tuesday, Raymond Industries will be gutted, and you'll be facing criminal charges for fraud. History doesn't just repeat, Charles, it rhymes. There's just one problem with your plan, Charles said, his voice still eerily calm. I'm not my father. I learned from his mistakes, and unlike him, I don't trust anyone. He pressed a button on his phone. Floodlights illuminated the entire airport. Vehicles emerged from hangars on both sides, FBI vehicles, state police, and tactical teams. Helicopters roared overhead, spotlights pinning the SUVs in place. What? Marcus spun, his composure shattering. What is this? This is justice, 23 years late, Charles said. Every word you've spoken tonight has been recorded and transmitted to federal authorities. You just confessed to murder, conspiracy to commit fraud, and approximately a dozen other felonies. Oh, and your shell companies. The FBI has been monitoring them for the past week, freezing assets as we speak. Victoria lunged at Charles, but Rachel was faster. She emerged from the hangar with her team, restraining Victoria with professional efficiency. The armed guards with Marcus were surrounded, outgunned, and surrendering within seconds. An FBI agent stepped forward, showing her badge. Marcus Ashford, Victoria Chen, you're under arrest for the murder of Edward Raymond, the attempted murder of Benjamin Raymond, fraud, racketeering, and conspiracy. As agents moved in, Sarah ran to Emma Foster. The young woman collapsed into her arms, sobbing. Is my mom okay? Your mom is safe, Sarah assured her. She's been very brave, and she's waiting for you. Indeed, Margaret Foster was there, kept safely back until the arrests were made. Mother and daughter reunited in tears while Sarah backed away, giving them space. She found herself standing next to Benjamin, who was being supported by Dr. Mitchell. The old man was crying quietly. Edward, he whispered, I finally kept my promise, brother. They paid for what they did to you. Charles joined them, his composed mask finally cracking to show exhaustion and relief. It's over. It's finally over. But Rachel shook her head, holding up her phone. Sir, we have a problem. The FBI is finding evidence that Marcus and Victoria had at least 2 other partners in this scheme. Politicians, possibly a federal judge. This isn't over. It's bigger than we thought. Charles looked at the phone, then at Benjamin, then at Sarah. Then we keep going. We tear down the whole corrupt structure. But this time, he managed a tired smile, this time we have something my father didn't. What's that? Sarah asked. Witnesses who won't run, evidence they can't destroy, and most importantly, people brave enough to do the right thing when it costs them everything. He looked directly at Sarah when he said it, and she felt something shift in her chest. "I owe you more than I can ever repay," Charles said quietly. "You saved my uncle's life. You kept him alive when I couldn't find him. You documented the evidence. You stood with us when you had every reason to walk away." "I'm a waitress who's about to be unemployed," Sarah replied. "I did what anyone should do." "But most people don't," Benjamin interjected. "That's what makes it extraordinary." In the weeks that followed, the arrests expanded. 3 state senators, 2 federal officials, and 17 corporate executives were indicted. The conspiracy Marcus and Victoria had built over 2 decades unraveled thread by thread. Charles used his resources to ensure Sarah never worried about money again, not as charity, but as payment for expert consultation on corporate ethics and her willingness to testify in the trials. She enrolled in business school, discovering a passion for forensic accounting. Margaret Foster returned to work for Charles, her daughter safe and the terrible weight of coercion lifted. Emma became an advocate for victims of extortion, turning her trauma into purpose. Benjamin Raymond recovered slowly, his memory sharp and his testimony devastating in court. He wrote a book about his experience, donating the proceeds to organizations supporting whistleblowers and corporate fraud victims. And the Duke, Charles Raymond, finally stepped out of his father's shadow. He restructured Raymond Industries with unprecedented transparency, creating a foundation dedicated to preventing corporate fraud and supporting those brave enough to expose it. 6 months after that night at the airport, Sarah found herself at a gala celebrating the foundation's launch. She wore an elegant dress that still felt foreign, talking with people who controlled billions of dollars. But when Charles found her standing alone on the terrace, looking out at the city lights, she felt like herself again. "Thinking about the hospital?" he asked, joining her at the railing. "Thinking about how strange life is," Sarah replied. 6 months ago, I was eating ramen and paying a stranger's hospital bills. Now I'm at a gala wearing a dress that costs more than my car did." "You sold that car to save a life," Charles reminded her. "Never forget that. The rest of this," he gestured to the glittering party, "is just wealth. What you did was rich in the ways that matter." Sarah smiled. "Did you rehearse that line?" "Absolutely. Benjamin helped. He said Edward would have wanted me to learn the difference between being rich and being wealthy." Charles's expression turned serious. "Sarah, I want to ask you something, and I need you to be honest." "Okay." "These past months working with you, seeing how you approach problems and people, I've realized something. The foundation needs a director. Someone who understands what it means to sacrifice for others. Someone who can't be bought or intimidated. Someone who does the right thing even when it costs everything." Sarah's heart began to race. "Charles, I'm not offering this because I feel obligated or out of charity or even gratitude, though I feel all those things. I'm offering because you're the best person for the job. You see through pretense. You value people over profit. You're exactly what the foundation, what I need." Sarah thought about the diner, about her small apartment, about her simple life before all this. Then she thought about Emma Foster's reunion with her mother, about Benjamin's tears when his brother's murder was finally acknowledged, about the thousands of pension holders who'd been saved when the fraud was exposed. "I'll do it," she said, "on one condition." "Name it." "You stop calling yourself the Duke. It's pretentious and weird." Charles laughed, the sound genuine and free. "Deal. Though I should warn you, Benjamin's already claiming credit as matchmaker." "Matchmaker?" Sarah raised an eyebrow. "His words, not mine. He claims getting hit by a car was all part of his master plan to fix my lonely existence." Charles paused, his expression vulnerable. "Though I suppose he's not entirely wrong. I was lonely, am lonely, and you've become—" "We're not doing this," Sarah interrupted gently. "Not yet. Not while everything is still complicated and you're technically my employer and there are 17 trials pending. But ask me again in a year." "A year," Charles agreed. "I can wait a year. I waited 23 years to find Benjamin and get justice for my father. What's one more year?" From inside the gala, they heard Benjamin's voice calling them back. The old man had recovered much of his strength, and he'd insisted on giving a speech tonight about second chances and the people who make them possible. As they walked back inside together, Sarah felt the weight of the past month settle into something like peace. She'd saved a stranger's life and uncovered a conspiracy. She'd lost her savings and found a purpose. She'd been a waitress and would become a foundation director. But most importantly, she'd learned that the greatest power anyone has is the choice to do right by another human being, even when, especially when, it costs everything. The story that began with hospital bills and a dying stranger had become something larger, a testament to compassion, courage, and the relentless pursuit of justice. And it was far from over. And so, Sarah Ashley's journey began, not with a grand plan or a hero's calling, but with a simple choice on an ordinary evening. To stop when everyone else kept walking. To care when caring cost everything. 3 years later, the Raymond Foundation stands as a testament to what happens when compassion meets courage. Benjamin Raymond, now healthy and whole, helps others expose the corruption he once fled from. Margaret and Emma Foster support families torn apart by corporate greed. And Charles Raymond, no longer hiding behind a title, has become a champion for the voiceless. As for Sarah, she discovered that the greatest wealth isn't measured in dollars, but in the lives we touch when we choose to see the humanity in strangers. The story you've just heard reminds us of a profound truth. Every act of kindness creates ripples we may never see. The stranger you help today might hold the key to changing tomorrow. The sacrifice you make in secret might become the catalyst for justice on a grand scale. In a world that often tells us to look away, to protect ourselves first, to question every gesture of help, Sarah's story whispers a different truth. Sometimes, the bravest thing we can do is simply care, to give when we have little, to stand when it's easier to walk away, to believe that one person's compassion can, against all odds, change everything. So tonight, as you close this chapter and return to your own life, ask yourself, who is the stranger you've been walking past? What small act of kindness is waiting for you, not because it's convenient or comfortable, but because it's right? You never know. That single choice might just be the beginning of something extraordinary. Thank you for being here. Thank you for listening. And thank you for believing that in a world that can sometimes feel overwhelming, your kindness still matters, because it does, more than you know. If this story touched your heart, share it with someone who needs to hear it. Subscribe to join us for more stories that remind us what it means to be truly human. And remember, the world changes one compassionate choice at a time. Until next time, take care of yourselves, and take care of each other.